all that revenue is just sitting there that you're now capitalizing on. It's not just good for you, it's good for the whole team. Everybody wins.
You can have the advertising growth, you can have the scaling up, but if you don't have the right culture at your firm, you're never going to be successful.
Love your people, demand high performance.
Hands down, the most impactful thing we've done is
The Earley Show will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our 24/7 virtual receptionist team.
I would absolutely, without question, recommend Answering Legal to every law firm. Not one law firm, but every law firm out there. I've gotten so much business as a result of hiring them. I knew that we were getting a lot of calls after hours. So I needed a company to answer those phone calls live and to get the name, number, because that's key information. All my cases are called back. Answering Legal is the best.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Earley Show, sponsored by our friends over at Answering Legal. I'm your host, Christopher Earley. I'm a personal injury lawyer here in Boston. And as always, I bring you the very best guests in the legal industry. Today, we have a real treat of my friend, Ben Leader. Ben not only has the best name in legal, but he's also a really good guy. He's a good person. He cares about helping people, and he's a generous guy. And I'm honored to have him as a friend of mine. I've gotten to know him through the last few years. He's doing big things. He's growing his practice, and he's a bold entrepreneur. He's a great lawyer. So Ben, it's just really good to have you on the show, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate that introduction. And we were just joking around a few minutes ago. I don't think Chris could have set me up any worse by having me come right after Joe Freed. I was listening to that episode this morning, and what a powerful, just compelling story, and an impressive guy. And so don't feel worthy of having my name on the list of guests based on the prior guests, but really happy to be here. And hopefully I can provide some value, even if it's what not to do more so than what to do.
No, you're a humble guy. You're a humble guy. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because you have so much knowledge, so much, innovation that you're implementing in your firm. So as always, we're going to have a lot of good content. So audience, make sure you, as always, sharpen those pencils. I'm sure we'll have plenty of writer downers. So with that, Ben, again, welcome to the show. I just want to take the listener back. You just talk about your upbringing, what it looked like, influences on your life, mom and dad, just sort of take us back where it all started.
Sure, man. I think we are very similar right now with where we are in our practices and the things we're doing, and, kind of the work ethic that we've got. And I see so many similarities between the two of us, but, I think our paths couldn't have probably been more different to get here. And, I very readily admit that, I had opportunities as the son of a practicing attorney that a lot of attorneys don't have out there. And, I'd like to think that I took full advantage of those. My dad, Jack Leader, joined the firm I'm with now, Elrod in 1989. And, at the time I was 1 year old. And so we've got some funny pictures of me crawling around, the same carpet that we had up until about 5 years ago, 30 years ago. So, we, grew up in and around the firm, in and around the business. I saw firsthand just growing up, and even back to elementary and middle school, I would kind of be aware of, dad was helping families, with this issue, or he did a little bit of family law, a little bit of Social Security. He did some motor vehicle accidents. They did comp a lot. And so they did a little bit of everything back then. But, I didn't know exactly what he did, but I knew that he helped people. And I saw a lot of, people in the community just show sincere, appreciation for what he had done for them. And the older I've gotten, I've heard a lot more stories about, how far above and beyond he would go to help people. But at the time, I just generally knew that, he helped people, didn't really know a whole lot about it. Oddly enough, he always tried to steer me away from the law. I think he just knew how hard it is, how much work is involved, long hours, long days. And he tried his best to steer me towards the medical side of things. And it's funny, I hear all the time, lawyers tell their kids to go to med school and doctors tell their kids to go to law school. And, I think there was a lot of that involved. But ultimately, it was just a calling. And I went into Clemson with no aspirations of coming back and going to law school. And, 4 years later, I was taking the LSAT and headed to Campbell University in Raleigh for law school. And, still wasn't sure that I wanted to do injury law at that time, was trying to kind of figure things out for myself where I was in life. But it kind of feels like now it was always meant to be. And looking back on it, the pieces were always in place for me to come back and do the same thing he did and try to continue his legacy. So, grew up as the son of a personal injury attorney. Mom worked at a bank here in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is where we're located, where I grew up, just below Charlotte, one of the suburbs of the Charlotte area. So had a lot of great opportunities that allowed me to go to Clemson, allowed me to go to Campbell, and came back and clerked for a year, which was hands down the best year of my life and experience. I would highly recommend it to anybody coming out of law school is go work for a judge. You get to see great lawyering, you get to see bad lawyering, you get to see all different types of law. It really up until that point, I wasn't certain what I wanted to do. But after about 3 months of sitting on the bench with the judge, I realized that civil work really was, where I wanted to be.
That's fantastic. Can I ask you, what was the biggest lesson you think you took from your parents growing up?
Biggest lesson. I think with my dad in particular, just seeing that there were no real shortcuts out there, that to build the reputation that he has in the community, you have to do things the right way all the time. You make that one mistake that you try to cut that one corner and your reputation's tarnished, forever. And they did such a good job of building their name and reputation. And just a little background, my dad's family is Jewish, actually. And so we were one of the few Jewish families growing up in this South Carolina. And so, being an attorney, being Jewish, kind of outside of the norm of what you see in the South, gives you a little bit of different perspective. And the community here in Rock Hill couldn't have been more welcoming to us, to our family, to the difference in faith. But I do think that background probably caused him to work even harder to build that reputation, just because there were some people out there that, going into it, they had certain stereotypes that, certain ways they viewed people outside of their faith. And so I think he almost had to go, above and beyond to establish our family name, our good reputation. And, did it the hard way, by doing it, the little things right along the way and not cutting any corners, if that makes any sense.
Let me ask you, so it sounds like dad worked a lot. Was he able to go to your ball games and school events?
Absolutely. He was as supportive as he could have been in terms of sports. Despite, a really strenuous work schedule, he would be at every, athletic game, every taekwondo event. He was always there supporting me. And that's something that I really tried to take to my kids as well, and provide that same level of support and, be present and be there. And, sometimes that does require me to work from, 9 to midnight at night instead of, 4 to 7 that evening to be able to make it to that game. And so there are sacrifices involved, but he was always a very present father. And, I view him as a role model in every sense of the word. With the way he treated my mom, the way he raised me and my sister, the way he treated our employees here at the firm, really look up to him. And over the last 2 years, he's been battling cancer. He was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in November of 2022. Never been a smoker his entire life. And, by the time they found it, it had, already significantly spread, and there was really no, cure at that point. And so he's been, courageously battling that illness for the last 2 years. And he's still getting up, getting dressed, coming to the office, finding ways to stay busy and to provide value despite, really going through hell, over the last really 6 to 12 months.
I'm so sorry.
Well, I appreciate it. But every day's a blessing. I've got a lot of friends that have lost parents in very short, time periods due to diagnosis. And so in a lot of ways, it's been 2 years that we didn't think we would necessarily have. And a lot of advances in medicine and clinical trials and things like that have allowed us to continue to have time together. And, I think part of the reason I'm so passionate about the firm and growing it and succeeding with it is because, part of it's his legacy too. And I want to see that carried forward because he did so much to get us to the point we are now. I feel like it's my duty to continue moving the firm forward into the future.
You're doing that. I love the perspective. It sounds like gratitude. You're just, a grateful guy. And that's the only way to go about this stuff. So kudos to you. And I'm sure your parents are just terrifically proud of you. And what you have accomplished at a very young age. You're, I believe, late 30s, right? Mid late 30s, but like you are way ahead of where I was at that age. So I got to give it to you. You have a lot of stuff figured out that I'm still trying to figure out. So hats off to you for
Well, I think
sure.
a lot of it is taking advantage of the opportunity and the blessings. And, there's a lot of people that don't take advantage of that. And I'm not going to sit here and say I built my firm myself or, built it from the ground up. That's a jump start that I was given that, people like you had to start from scratch. And I recognize that and respect the hell out of it. And I acknowledge that I was, kind of given a step up and, want to take full advantage of it.
So we met, it was a few years ago in San Diego, at a mastermind, and I didn't know you, but I'm going back to that time, and it, let me just back up before we get into that. When did you join Elrod Pope as a lawyer?
So I started as an associate in 2014. So this is the 10-year mark for me this year.
So you'd been there for a while, and I remember that I first met you, you were trying to institute some changes just to tweak a few things. And since that time, since that time that I met you, there's so much growth. Um, how many first of all, how big is the firm currently? How many people?
So we've got a total of 8 attorneys here. We've got 19 full-time team members and about 5, 6 part-times as well. So we're somewhere around the mid 30s in total number of people.
Are how many partners are there?
So as of today, we've got 6 equity partners. On January 1st, we will be transitioning that down to 4. And so when I joined the firm, I believe we had 7 at one point, was as high as we got, and we will be down to 4 at the end of this year. And I would say we have a very unique structure. We're very top heavy, obviously, with partners and with attorneys. And coming into the firm, I was kind of the low man on the totem pole, so I wasn't gonna second guess partnership decisions. I was happy just to be in the room, but I do think it does have a ton of benefits that partnership provides everybody. Strengths and weaknesses you can really take advantage of, but it also has a ton of challenges. And the more people that are in the room, the more disagreements you're going to have, and trying to get everybody on the same page as far as a vision goes can be difficult. With 5, 6, 4 partners even.
So I remember, again, we first met, there was some older attorneys, and here you are, a younger attorney, cutting your teeth, practicing law, getting exposure to the business of law at the same time. How did you handle instituting change? Or better yet, how did you persuade others in leadership that there's maybe a better way to do XYZ that maybe we haven't been trying so far? How'd you navigate personalities, egos? How'd you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for me, I was kind of lucky in that I kind of just fell into what I would call a managing partner role. We had a previous director of operations that somewhat abruptly left our firm while we were out in the CLE. And we came back, and suddenly I was going to fill in for her and handle the marketing and kind of oversee the intake for a few months as we looked at, our options. And what we discovered was just kind of a disaster, is that we had lost a pulse on a lot of things. And as we started peeling back the layer of the onion, we realized we were, spending a lot of money on things that weren't bringing us an ROI. We weren't tracking a lot of data at all. We had been around for 40 years at this point, but somehow we had no marketing data, which is just shocking. We had nothing to base our decisions off of. And so suddenly I filled in for this spot, and I realized, man, this is something that I'm really passionate about. Like, I really enjoy trying to crack this code and figure out, this, analyze this data and obtain the data and have it in a central location and be able to make, informed decisions. It just kind of got the juices flowing for me. And so I think part of it was just striking the right chord and finding kind of what I'm passionate about. But there was certainly a lot of skepticism and inherent just kind of pushback from some of the older, partners at first. And it wasn't necessarily that they didn't trust me or, didn't want to give it a shot. It was just, we had done things the same way for so long. Just the thought of, flipping something upside down was not something that had really been talked about. And I remember specifically during COVID, one of the big issues was e-sign and in-person versus virtual meetings. And we had always forced an in-person meeting with potential clients, and we thought we were providing a service. If you call our firm, you're going to get to meet, face to face with the lawyer who will answer your questions. And, I remember once we started doing more of the e-signs and the virtual meetings, the people seemed to be happier and seemed to take that option over coming into the office, every time. And so suddenly we started pushing that, throughout the firm, is that our numbers are a lot better when we're doing, remote signups versus in-person signups. And, there were several partners that specifically said, I still want to do it my way. This has always been my way, and this works for me. And, I want to set the relationship parameters from the start, in person. And so it was a little bit of a roller coaster, but I think at the end of the day, the real kind of factor that has pushed all of them to open their minds and accept doing things different ways was just the results. We immediately saw just huge impacts from a lot of those little changes we made after San Diego, for example. One of the things we brought back from that mastermind was, incentivizing our team whenever they were able to get positive reviews. And at the time we had 122 reviews. We had been around for, 40 years, and, now we're over 600. And, we just had never incentivized them. We had never even thought, we need to be rewarding our staff. We just assumed that if they could get a review, they would. But, once you add that carrot to it, and suddenly, you see a lot more reviews coming in. And so I think it wasn't anything magic that I did or said. It was really just slowly rolling out some of these changes I was recommending, kind of piece by piece, and them seeing the immediate impact and results, and recognizing that it was working.
So maybe perhaps initial resistance, but then traction with results, right? And then it sticks, and I guess then this stuff works, right? And I can understand that, right? I can see it both sides, right? There's a way we've been doing things. It's worked well. We're going to continue to do well. Maybe there's a way to disrupt that a little bit to get a better result. That's tough. So why did you initially join a mastermind? What brought you to that? Because that's a big investment. Before I wrote a check, my first mastermind, I sat at my desk for like 2 months. I was like, it's a big check, man.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. Why did you join a mastermind? What propelled you to, because that's a big step, travel, expense, time away from your family. Why'd you pull the trigger on that?
Yeah. So for us, it was somewhat out of necessity. We felt at the time that we had a great year in 2019 due to one outlier settlement. Otherwise, the year was pretty abysmal. And then 2020 was a very rough year for us, and 2021 was even worse. We thought we were kind of getting over the COVID hurdle and things were going to trend back up, but everything was trending the wrong directions. And so at the end of 2021, we had kind of a come to Jesus meeting amongst the partners, where we sat down with some of our vendors and we sat down with each other and just said, look, things are not going well. Our revenue is decreasing, for the third year in a row, or we're not signing cases. Our workers' comp practice had really dried up at that time. We weren't tracking a lot of data, but everything we were tracking was moving in the wrong direction. And I think we all kind of had some sleepless nights, worried about the future of the firm, really. And so we were trying to look at options. And I remember we sat through 3 or 4 different marketing pitches from, digital vendors and TV. And, we were trying to decide, do we want to do radio? Do we want to do TV? Do we do more billboards? How do we get this train back on track? And I think it was our SEO agency at the time, was like, it sounds like y'all are really looking for consulting advice. And he was like, there's 2 people that I know that, can help fix your problem. And one of them is Harlan Schillinger, and one of them's Ken Hardison. And I had never heard either of those names at that time. But it was actually, Hayden Haskins from Drive was the one that recommended Ken to us. And we reached out to Ken and got some information on the group. And I remember we had a heated debate over spending that money. Really didn't think that, that investment was going to pay off. And there seemed to be a lot of travel involved, and the costs for that weren't included. And so I remember it was about as close of a vote as it could be. in terms of deciding to do it. And then another kind of discussion of who to send there if we do it. And fortunately, I was the young partner who was, willing to hop on an airplane and fly to San Diego. And so it all worked out from there. But really, it was just, we had tried all these failed marketing campaigns and things were going the wrong direction. And this was kind of our, last hope of, trying to get things back on track.
Yeah. Harlan and Ken, two really big dogs in this industry. They were both on the show previously. I encourage the audience, go reach out to Ken Artis and reach out to Harlan Schillinger. Those guys are the real deal, metal tested. They've been through a few rodeos, and they're great leaders in this industry. So reach out to them. So what's interesting about your practice, there's good parts and bad parts, just like with my practice. With me, the good part is I'm the only guy. Like it's on me. I make the decisions, right? Good or bad. That's the bad part as well. So I make all the decisions. With you, a lot of listeners are like me. They're just sort of, they're the one, but there's a body involved, right? And a lot of people on this call can relate to that. What has been your biggest, going back from San Diego, dealing with others, having to get buy-in? That's just their psychology, persuasion. There's so much layers to that onion right there, right? That I think requires a certain level of leadership. And that sounds like you've just really advanced a lot. Your firm has advanced quickly. There's been 40 years of growth, but the past few years has been a lot of growth. Could you give us a couple mistakes you made, right? Because we're always swinging and missing. I know I am. I usually am. Are there a couple things that clicked and worked out well, and there were a couple things that just kind of fell flat for the audience? Could you share a couple of those hits and misses?
Yeah, I think, I'd kind of put it as both a hit and a miss in some ways, but I think I was so hyper focused on firm growth when we first joined Pilma. I was so focused on sign cases and, the metrics, that culture was something that kind of went right over my head, mindset and culture. And now I feel like one of the things I've learned from you really, and, Bill Biggs and a lot of these other people that really have specialized and focused on culture, is that is a crucial piece of the formula too. You can have the advertising growth, you can have the scaling up, but if you don't have the right culture at your firm, you're never going to be successful. And so I think, for me, it was almost ignoring a lot of the culture based, lessons that I was hearing and seeing lectures on, and really just focus so much on marketing and intake, but not on, what's the dynamic between our intake team and our paralegal team due to this influx of cases that's come in that, requires the paralegals to take on so much more work. And, or how are we showing our staff that we truly do care about them and appreciate them? And how are we dealing with office drama and really just kind of the overall mindset of, running an organization like this was something that I was missing the boat on big time. And I think a lot of the guys here we were all so focused on practicing law that nobody was really looking at the big picture. And, we thought we had a good culture, but one of the things I realized after that San Diego trip was, we couldn't have been more off base on that. And we've made a lot of changes over the last couple of years, a lot that I picked up from you, to really improve the culture around here. And you can there's a palpable sense of it around the office now. You can feel it.
It's so hard, Ben. The culture thing is so hard. I took a different path. I think I was admittedly too focused on culture and not about performance. I was like, no, culture, culture, culture. Now, Ben, I'm a little bit more like culture and production, right?
Yeah.
And that's a takeaway I learned from a mastermind I was in a couple months back. So speaking of Bill Biggs, he was on the show as well. And he has a line, a quote that I literally think about all the time, because I think that's like the path forward for a successful law firm doing big things. It's love your people, demand high performance. So the love your people is the culture. Demand high performance is we got to get stuff done here. We're doing big things as a team. It's those two things, right? And so you and I had different experiences, two sides of the same coin, right? And I'm sure a lot of people on this call can relate to that. I almost think the culture is trickier because it's vague. It's amorphous. Like, what does it mean? What does it look like? What is our culture? What's our DNA? I know that you're a core values guy, right? You're into, running it the right way, authentically. And I know that, do you still have those? I think it's really cool. And you have good turnout, those client parties. Do you still do that or no?
Yeah, we do. We did our first one last year. It was a huge success. Had 70 plus people there. We're going to do it again in February this year. And we're also doing one tailored towards attorneys too, where in the fall we'll do like an attorney kind of ambassador event for all of our referral partners. And then in the spring, we'll do a client ambassador event. We're still kind of, tweaking how often, but I think we're kind of shifting towards doing one big one versus trying to do a number of smaller ones, just to try to, get as many people there at one time as possible. Cause it's a lot of work, as you know, too. And, but yeah, we've, you mentioned core values. That was something prior to Pilma. We had no core values.
Same.
We inherently operated with the same values, but we had never put them on paper. And trying to find the balance of, the culture and the holding people accountable is really the $1 million question. And it seems like we're both headed towards the balance. I'm coming from a different, angle than you are. But I think everybody thinks that they have a good culture. And I think Bill is also the one that says, every problem is a leadership problem. And I think we had always looked at certain staff as the problem with our culture and not taking a look at ourselves. And, how are we handling these problems and what message is that sending to the Chicago office? And, I think a lot of times it was kind of our model just to stick our head in the sand and hope, whatever storm or drama would pass over and be done. And I think now we take a much better approach of, truly caring about our people and showing them that.
It's so hard because once you're okay, my attention's on the culture, and the production falls. My attention's on production, culture. So it's just this balancing act that is no easy feat. And so you speak my language. What I think I interrupted you before. You were talking about some things that were tricky, the culture. What were some things you did that you think up leveled the firm that really kind of clicked? What were some things that got you going?
Hands down, the most impactful thing we've done is really focus on intake. And the more I look back on it and kind of look at our journey, I think we grew in what probably is the least expensive and the easiest way to scale possible. And that's really just to increase your conversions at the end of the day.
Yes.
We had this 40-year history of marketing and a great reputation. And we were just letting so much slip through the cracks that we had no clue about. And so once we got dialed in, we hired Legal Intake Pros, who I know you work with too. Great company. Yanni's one of the most impressive people, I've worked with personally in my career. And once we got her involved and let her really dive into our intake systems, we just realized there was just so much low hanging fruit out there that we were not capitalizing and capturing. And so when we first started working with her, I think our conversion rates were in the low 50% range. And, we're trying to keep them in the 80% range now. And just the growth that we've seen just from improving intake has been, huge. I did an analysis on just one of our intake coordinators recently, and, her increasing her conversion rate by, 10+% this year, should equate to an additional 50 plus cases, an additional $800,000 in revenue. And it's, leads we were already paying for, cases we were already paying to market for. And, we just weren't capturing them. And so I think, that everybody loves to go spend more money on marketing. And that's what everybody thinks is the logical way to grow a firm. But I think step one should always be to take a step back and focus on intake and make sure you're capturing what you're spending your money on. Otherwise, you're just throwing it out the window. So that intake alone has been a huge part of our growth. When we joined Pilma, we were at 165-ish signed cases a year. That very first year in 2022, we jumped to 363. And we didn't do any more marketing. It was all fixing our own internal problems. Last year, we grew from 363 to 500. And this year, we're shooting for 600. And so it's, we're squeezing all we can squeeze out of intake now. I feel like we're now capturing those cases, which is going to necessitate us to go, do the hard part now and, advertise more and acquire more cases through marketing. But really that intake is what I view as low hanging fruit that for whatever reason, nobody talks about.
It is low hanging fruit. It's right there for the taking. I mean, all that revenue is just sitting there that you're now capitalizing on. It's not just good for you. It's good for the whole team. Everybody wins, right? It's like everyone does better. There's more revenue and it creates opportunities. So everybody wins. You're really dialed in on data, which I think is really smart. You and I were joking last week. We chatted on the phone and we thought, we in law school, we never envisioned that we'd be geeking out on conversion rates and, watching conversion rates. It's funny how things change
That's
that you
right.
and I spent a lot of time in lead document, like yourself, right? Like always looking, geeking out of the numbers, finding leverage, low hanging fruit. I encourage the audience, don't spend another dollar on marketing unless your intake is tight because you have no idea what kind of leakage you have because you've got plenty of it because, this stuff is hard. So even when you study like Ben and I do, you realize there's still leakage, there's still room for improvement. But I know, Ben, what you've done is really gotten into lead doc and you've taught me, in person when we get together, you show me lead doc. There's so much to learn. It's not overwhelming. It's just enough where it's not scary lead doc. You got to kind of devote time to it because there's dollars waiting for you right there in that data. So what's your role? I know you oversee intake. What else do you oversee at the firm? Is it marketing? Sort of, what are those hats that you're currently wearing?
Yeah. So I call it external relations is what we have the title as a managing partner of external relations, which really includes marketing and intake, everything, outside of our internal processes. One of my law partners, Garrett, oversees all of our HR and kind of internal, policies and procedures relating to that. And we both kind of tag team the finances. I've tried to get a little more involved in finances this year because it was easy in the past for me to just stick my head in the sand and, spend money on marketing, which without worrying about that side of the firm, but trying to get kind of a big picture now. But, one of our senior counsel, Tommy Pope, who's the face of our firm, is transitioning to of counsel. And he's been one of our main kind of managing partners over the last decade. And so my assumption is that my kind of managerial duties will probably increase, come January over the course of the next year. And casework will probably continue to decrease to some extent just to be able to make sure, we're managing the firm right.
What's your biggest challenge currently?
Right now I'm in this crazy phase of life, 2.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old, boys, both, in daycare. My wife is a busy attorney as well. She does family law for a large firm in Charlotte. And so she, is on the billable hour train and, stays pretty busy herself. And so just trying to balance it all out, honestly, between casework, managerial partnership work, being a present dad, being there for my dad during this journey for him too. It's just not enough hours in the day. And so I'd say just, surviving one day at a time right now is kind of where I am in this phase of life, and, trying to take full advantage of everything that's out there.
What's your biggest frustration as you're scaling the firm up currently?
Biggest frustration?
Yeah.
I think the hardest part for me right now is trying to still balance casework and, managerial work. Over the last few years, every time I go to one of these mastermind meetings, people are telling me you got to trim down your casework. You got to get out of casework. And I just haven't been in a position to be able to do that yet. I've cut it in half. But my managerial kind of duties have also more than doubled during that time. So I feel like I'm constantly ignoring one piece of that puzzle to focus on the other. And a lot of days I feel like I just bounce back and forth between the two all day long. And, dealing with a fire, in a case that requires a call to a client, and then, dealing with a billboard vendor right after that. And then, it's hard to shift your mindset from casework to marketing and back and forth all day long. And so, my biggest challenge is just trying to still, prioritize my cases and also, grow the firm and manage it in the way that I want it to be run.
Completely relate to everything you just said right there. So you, like me, you seek out and you get these speaking gigs. And I think that's the best form of advertising for a lawyer is public speaking, right? I see you, doing that more and more. I try to get these things too. How do you go about getting these? Because I feel like lawyers don't take advantage of, or they're not bullish enough. They don't pursue them enough. How do you get your speak opportunities?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's another thing I kind of just followed your lead on. Honestly, I saw you doing a lot of this last year, and Ken had asked to speak at the PILMA Summit, which to be perfectly honest, public speaking is not something that I consider myself to be good at or something that I really enjoy. It makes me very anxious leading up to it, but that's a good thing to have that feeling and, work through that. And I find myself, enjoying it more and more, as painful as the process is to force yourself to do it. But really getting that first opportunity, was kind of step one. And then since then, it's felt like everything just falls into place after that. For example, Jay Berkowitz with 10 Golden Rules was, at the PILMA Summit, and he heard me speak on intake and some of the takeaways I had given, what not to do more so than what to do. And, he invited me to come speak at his conference and be on a webinar. And so it's something that I feel like I just got to take full advantage of every opportunity I'm given. I don't know really what it will lead to or what it may not lead to, but I do know we've seen a huge uptick in, attorney referrals from folks that I've met on the circuit and, at these conferences, or may have listened to a webinar. I think, we counted like 13 cases last year that came from that, PILMA circle. And so it's led to cases. That really wasn't the reason that, I started doing it, but I think just taking full advantage of every opportunity you're given, even if you think there may only be 5 people listening to something, you just never know what that's going to lead to. And, I think I'm at a point now where if I'm given a stage, I'm going to take advantage of that opportunity and try to provide as much value as I can. And, if it leads to something great, if not, it was a great experience, and hopefully I'm, a better speaker because of it.
No question. I encourage the audience, get those speaking gigs. I was just on a panel a few days ago, at the Boston Bar Association. It was a rainy night, a terrible weather night here in Boston. I was on a panel with 4 other lawyers, probably 15 people in attendance. I don't care. When I did, hooked up with them on LinkedIn, put them on my attorney newsletter list. Like, these things add up. Ben knows, like, these speaking gigs that you do in front of 5 people or 500, it matters. You do it over the course of a long time, you're going to get those attorney referrals Ben just mentioned. So you got to get out there. You got to speak. If you think out of anything to speak about, find something to speak about, right? I mean, you got to just kind of make it happen. I'm a big believer in that. So you do a lot of marketing, right? And you're a savvy marketer. I like you guys lean into community marketing, right? It's not just all about billboards and LSA. It's like you guys go out in the community. I think that's the best marketing. Networking. This is about providing value, right? You're public speaking, but then you're also getting out in the community. Could you talk about your philosophy, the firm's approach to getting out in the community, rolling up your sleeves, helping out, volunteering, giving back? What do you guys do? Because I see you do that on social. I really like what you're doing.
Yeah. So community has always been a big part of our firm here. Being local here, we've got a lot of national law firms that have come into town, just like everybody else that, are advertising heavily, that we're now competing with. And it's no longer, the firm around the corner that's our biggest competition. It's, the billboard firm from out of state that, is coming into town. And so that's one of the kind of differentiators, I think, for us, is just that we are local and that we do give back. We don't have to try to fake it or hide it. I mean, people see us everywhere. And so I think last year, out of all the solicitations we got, we said no one time to somebody asking us to sponsor something. And it was because another injury law firm was already the key sponsor for it. And so we really strived, if somebody asked us for help or a donation, we try our best to make it happen. Even if it's not the sponsorship they're wanting, we'll still try to send them something. Another thing that we really lean into is boots on the ground. And for years we would just write checks to people, and send the check, and, we'd have our logo on a calendar or on a banner, but, we weren't physically there. And now we have a rule that if we're sponsoring something, we have to have somebody physically present at that event to be interacting with the people. We just did this at a mental health walk a few months ago with an organization called NAMI, where we had a table there, and out of probably 50 plus vendors, I think maybe 7 or 8 of them were at this event, and we had a table, and sure enough, 4 people were in a wreck, 2 weeks ago, and they remembered us from being at that organization's event and, called us for that reason. And so, the grassroots stuff, I think, is always going to be a key component of what we do. And there's just no substitute for it. And having boots on the ground, having people in the community come up to you and say, man, I see y'all everywhere. That's really my goal.
Absolutely. Right. Because you're showing up authentically, genuinely helping people, providing value. Why would they not call you after they were in an accident? Why would you not be the one? Even if it's a unrelated a divorce matter, like you're a lawyer. So I'm going to call, I'm going to call Elrod Bull, there. So that's just important to get out there. And I feel like that's the secondary motivation for you and me is secondary motivation is getting cases. The first is like, just get out there and just kind of see what happens. Cause it just makes you, I just feel like for me, it fills up my bucket, makes me feel good. Um, and so as
And
an
I love what
MC,
you've done with your staff too. And that's something I want to incorporate next year into our plan is let them have some involvement in that decision making. Cause a lot of times they'll bring something up, we'll jump on it and make a donation, but having some sort of process where they can nominate, charitable causes and help us choose and, select those people. I think that's great. It's such buy-in from them and, allows us to support causes that they're passionate about.
yeah, I try to foster an ownership mentality because I don't want to be the only owner of the law firm, right? I want everyone to have an ownership mentality. And that is an example of, hey, your opinion really matters. So you guys, I want you to vote on who we should impact this month. I stole that from another lawyer. It's not my original idea, but I sort of put my spin on it. And I encourage the audience, if you have one person or 100, they should all have an ownership mentality, right? It's like everyone is rowing the boat. Everyone wins. We just talked about that earlier. When there's more revenue, everyone wins. When there's more, there's the pie is bigger. There's more to cut up. So everybody wins. And to do it in a way where people feel invested, right? A lot of, younger folks, millennials, it's not always about the dough. It's like, what are we doing here? What's the purpose? How are we impacting people? And I feel like that's really important. So I really try to focus on that. So you've had a lot of success. Is there one thing, maybe two things that you kind of look back and say that was kind of I messed up on that, a mistake you made, because that could really provide, help to the audience. I'm sure you swing a lot and you connect and miss just like me. What are some things you look back and say, I shouldn't have done that. That didn't work out.
Yeah, I think the easiest one that pops up in my mind is our bonus structure for our team here. We used to have a uniform bonus that was paid out equally to everybody based on the firm's profitability, which we thought was great. That when the firm was experiencing good times, our staff could experience that with us. Bad times, they would also kind of suffer with us, through the sting in terms of, additional bonuses. And, what we learned is that, arbitrary bonuses are not motivational to anybody. And that there is a huge need for performance-based metrics to be involved in those bonus structures. And so we are now shifting to a fully, key performance indicator based bonus structure with annual reviews and key metrics that everybody is aware of and familiar with. And again, that just kind of goes back to the culture thing. We thought we had a good culture. We thought we were taking care of our people, but these bonuses were just a source of constant drama and anxiety and, caused more harm than they did good, I think. And so letting everybody know, hey, we're all looking at these same metrics. This is what we're measuring your bonus on. And they know going into that what to expect. I think has been a huge, game changer for us. So, bonus structure is a big piece of the puzzle for keeping team members happy. And even though some of them may end up with less money under the new structure, I think they appreciate the transparency in it more than anything else.
So I love that. What I've discovered as well, and I never knew this until I knew it. A lot of people aren't motivated by money. I have team members who are motivated by time off. And that's how we move along. A lot. My firm is opportunity to get time off. That moves the needle. And it's just important to identify everyone's different. You have to really tap in, I feel like, to the team member. What motivates them to really get after it, to want to be incentivized. We can't just assume it's this or that, right? I think that's where a lot of lawyers could get better at, myself included. And I believe I shared this with you. And for the listener, please make sure you sign up for my practice tip of the week. And I believe you're on my list. It's a weekly email. Go to practicetipoftheweek.com, practicetipoftheweek.com, sign up, free newsletter in your inbox. I mentioned that because my practice tip of the week this week, coming out in a few days on Tuesday, is something that you and I talked about. And I share this because I feel like it was helpful for my law firm. One day I was just sort of working. I thought, I bet my team thinks I'm just crushing it, and you and I know when you scale, like there's a lot of reinvestment in the business. And so I made a decision to get transparent. And I was very exposed. I don't know how it would be received. And it was received very well because I was raw and honest. And I believe in brutal honesty. That's one of our core values. So being brutally honest with your staff, letting them know, hey, Early's not printing money. And I share my finances, within, I didn't just like open up every single thing. They don't need or care about that. But your team needs to know the score. And I talk about that in my email blast that goes out on Tuesday. It's like, how can they know how to win if they don't know the score? Right. So quarterly, we're going to share here. Here's where we're at revenue to date. Are we on pace to hit our goals? Are we behind where we need to be? So, I wanted to share that because I think it's helpful. And not, look, this isn't for everybody. A lot of lawyers, like, hell no, I'm not going to share my numbers. I respect that. That's just how Early does it. And that's just how I'm going to do it. But I think whatever you do, as long as your team knows behind the curtain what's going on. Ben, you seem like you're not cagey. You're transparent with your team, so they know what's up with what you expect, so they know how to win. I think it's important. Open communication, no BS. People appreciate honesty. And I think that's why you're winning at a high level, is that you're good to your staff, you're open with them. And when you see a problem, you have the stomach to fix it, even if you get opposition. That's really important, right? You make those tough calls that are best for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's easy for the people to see the cases settling and assuming that a lot of money is being made. But,
Right.
the overhead equation is something I've learned that they are usually, shocked to hear just, rent or,
No
file
idea.
volume, what the technology alone costs. And so I agree that that helps everybody be a little more bought into the direction you're going.
Because how could they know? I think a lot of lawyers, we assume everybody knows the cost of file rent. Everyone knows the cost of the rent. Well, they have no idea. How could they or should they if you don't
Right.
share? So just, getting in front of that. And again, not everyone's comfortable doing that, but I feel like you can't assume things that people may not be aware of. So communication is crucial. Ben, a lot of respect for you. I see you getting after. I see you hustling. You inspire me to keep going. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, I like to consider myself as an open book. I'm willing to share anything I can, to help anybody I can. We talked a lot about the scarcity mindset and, how that's kind of not how either one of us operate. The more we give, the more we seem to get back in return too. And so, my email address is bleader, BLEADER @elrodpope.com. Feel free to find me on social media. My Instagram's Attorney Leader. Call me, text me, whatever I can do to help anyone out there. I'm more than willing to, and would love to connect with any of your listeners. And I'm sure there's a way we can help each other.
Sure, Ben. Thank you so much. All right, that's it for this episode of The Earley Show. Be sure to check out more episodes of our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Answering Legal YouTube channel.